Hey everyone, what's going on? Glad you're here. I've been hands-on with Fallout 4's new creations update, and if you're booting the game up this week, you'll spot it right away. It shows on consoles as version 1.39/1.004, and it's more than a tiny stability pass. This patch is about building a runway for the next stretch of Fallout 4's life, wrapping the community's best stuff into something you can access without juggling websites, Peter, mod managers, or a pile of README files. It also quietly fixes a bunch of long-standing annoyances that have sat in the margins of people's playthroughs for years. Let's start with the most obvious change the moment you land on the main menu, the new creations entry. Hit that and you're looking at a curated in-game browser for content. Some free, some premium, all wired into Fallout 4 the way Starfield and Skyrim handle it now. The key bit is access. If you already own Fallout 4 in any flavor, you get the creations menu. You don't have to buy a special edition to see it. It's simply part of the base game update. That said, the Anniversary Edition bundles a big chunk of Creation Club content if you do choose to upgrade, but the actual menu and storefront are live for everyone. It brings official and community creations under one roof, so you can scroll, click, download, and play without leaving the wasteland. Because of that integration, there's a heads up for anyone who likes to customize the game's front end. If you had mods that touch the main menu, those are the ones most likely to act up or outright fail. Bethesda called this out before the patch went live, and several outlets amplified the warning. The smart move before loading a save is to disable any main menu mod, launch once, let the game build whatever it needs for creations, and then re-enable only what you're sure is compatible. If a mod author hasn't shipped an update yet, you'll thank yourself for keeping things clean here. This is not like the 2024 next-gen Shockwave where every script extender cried out at once. It's surgical, but it still matters if your menu has been heavily tweaked. What I appreciate is that this isn't just a storefront patch. There are changes under the hood that touch how the game feels in moment-to-moment combat. VATS has been reworked in a way most players will notice within a few firefights. The hit chance logic is now consistent across platforms, which brings parity if you bounce between PC and console, and that weird behavior where percentages would drop to 0% or just lie to you on distant or partially obscured targets has been addressed. On top of that, the old trick of tagging enemies through walls without the penetrator perk has been closed. If you've built characters around intended perk trade-offs, this is good news because the system lines up with what the perk descriptions actually promise. It also nudges you towards smarter positioning rather than leaning on a quirk of line-of-sight checks. If you're on an ultra-wide or super ultra-wide setup, the patch lands like a breath of fresh air. There's proper scaling for the HUD and UI elements, cleaner item preview windows, saner quest update banners, and, maybe the most noticeable, the end of that headache where crafting stations or workshop mode could crash on broad aspect ratios. People with 21:9 or 32:9 panels have been hacking around these rough edges for a long time. Now the game itself meets you halfway instead of forcing a band-aid. It's not just cosmetic polish either. The stability gain when you're moving between benches and snapping settlement pieces matters during long build sessions. Another quiet win is performance when you're running creations that alter NPC visuals. If you've ever loaded into Diamond City and felt the game hitch while the crowd spun up with new face data, hair packs, or high-res textures, you know the exact micro-stutters I'm talking about. The update smooths that out. It doesn't magically turn the game into a different engine, but it reduces those little spikes that stack up over time, especially in modded playthroughs that touch many NPCs. It's the kind of change you don't appreciate until you go back to an older build and suddenly wonder why your camera is bumping every few seconds. On the reliability front, Bethesda tightened up how the game behaves when their account or backend services wobble. In the past, a hiccup on Bethesda.net could lead to stallouts or weird error loops. That's been hardened so you can keep playing without the launcher mood swings. It's not the sort of feature you can showcase in a flashy trailer, but it's the difference between a relaxed evening in the Commonwealth and a night spent troubleshooting a login prompt. Add that to the crafting crash fixes and the ultra-wide work, and you've got a patch that reads very much like a studio looking at the rough spots real players hit every single week. A quick PSA on timing if you wondered why your mods list looked sleepy for a few days. Bethesda scheduled maintenance for Fallout 4 mods and the Creation Club while they staged the rollout. From November 6th through November 10th, uploads and downloads through the official pipeline were offline as they put the new pieces in place. You could still juggle your load order and grab things from third-party sites in the meantime, but that planned window is why the official taps were turned off for a bit. If you popped in midweek and thought something was broken on your end, it wasn't you. So how does it actually feel to use creations now? Honestly, the experience is straightforward in a way that fits the age of the game. The storefront and browser are in the client, the descriptions and thumbnails are readable on a couch from a console, and the flow from browsing to playing is simpler than bouncing to a web page. It's designed for two kinds of players at once: the folks who want to sample a handful of new weapons, armor sets, quests, and workshop kits without becoming a mod manager expert, and the veterans who just want a low-friction path to curated content they can trust won't detonate a save. If that sounds like Skyrim's current vibe or Storefield's recent evolution, that's by design. Fallout 4 finally sits at the same table, and that's a good place for a 2015 classic that people keep returning to. Let's talk about expectations, because anytime you centralize content, people wonder what happens to the wider mod scene. Nothing in this update deletes your freedom to keep using Nexus or whatever pipeline you prefer. It adds a first-party lane that's convenient for many players who either don't have the time to curate or just want a smoother on-ramp. If you're a power user with a carefully tuned load order, keep doing you. If you're brand new or you're playing on console where choice was always tighter, this lowers the barrier to entry. The trick is knowing which mods you should keep an eye on after a patch. Anything that touches the main menu, UI layout, or that injects code right at startup. Those are the usual dominoes when a game's front end changes. Flip those off, boot once, and then bring them back one at a time when you see the author mark them as compatible. That's been the simplest way to avoid surprise softlocks between load screens. Combat tweaks deserve another pass here because they change how you plan builds. With the wall peek exploit gone, stealth shooters who used to rely on weird line-of-sight quirks will lean more on perks, silencers, and actual sight lines. Meanwhile, VATS parity means that if you've ever swapped from a controller on console to mouse and keyboard on PC and felt percentages behave differently, that friction should fade. You'll still want to account for weapon spread and limb targeting, but the math behind those percentages isn't playing shell games anymore. That matters for critical builds, for chems timing, and for deciding when to commit AP versus kiting an enemy into a better angle. It's the kind of subtle fairness pass that makes your character plan transfer more cleanly from one platform to another. For settlement fans, the ultra-wide fixes are sneaky huge. Crafting, placing, and rotating pieces is muscle memory, and any crash in that loop turns a creative session into a save scumming exercise. The patch stabilizes those transitions and cleans up how menus render. So the time you spend in workshop mode is more about knocking down walls and less about praying a menu doesn't explode because your monitor is wider than a billboard. If you build for hours at a time, that's not a small quality of life win. It's the difference between finishing a market square and walking away because your patience ran out. If you're wondering whether there's anything you need to do before continuing an existing save, here's the simple checklist I've been using. First, launch the game vanilla, no main menu mods, just once to let the new creation's backend initialize. Second, visit a crafting bench and enter workshop mode if you're on an ultra-wide panel, just to confirm you're solid. Third, head into a quick fight, raiders, super mutants, anything nearby, and kick on VATS a few times. You're mostly sanity checking that the numbers look sane and that the illegitimate wall shots are gone, unless you've actually spec'd into Penetrator. If all that feels normal, you're golden to start layering your usual add-ons back in. Now, what's the bigger picture? This update positions Fallout 4 to live another cycle with less friction. It matches the content strategy Bethesda is pushing across its portfolio. Put curated creations in the game client, keep the door open for community stuff, and smooth the rough edges that stop people from replaying. If you're returning because of the show, because of a new platform in your living room, or because you've run out of settlements to blueprint in Spectacle Island, this is a friendly patch. It doesn't rip out systems you know. It doesn't invalidate hundreds of hours of character planning. It just makes the game more consistent and the path to new content shorter.